Hello and welcome to Patrick Come Lately Talk Radio. This is Stefan, your host, British by birth, American by choice. The Founding Fathers crafted some remarkable documents that led to the creation of a great country founded on liberty and self-reliance. I have lived in the Euro-socialist nightmare, and I'm doing what I can to return this country to the vision that the Founding Fathers gave us. We need to strive to rebuild that shining city on the hill, for without us, the world has nowhere to turn for freedom. For the next hour, I will be presenting news, views, and guests that help keep the true spirit of America alive. And good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you're listening to the show from, whenever you're listening to the show. Let me wish you a happy belated Independence Day. The show goes out on today, 7th of July, so a few days after Independence Day. I know a lot of my listeners listen to the recording, so you'll be listening even later, but let me wish you, as I said, a belated happy Independence Day, and I hope that it was safe for you as well. Tonight I'm going to spend most of the show with my thoughts on that great document. As I say in the intro, the Founding Fathers crafted some remarkable documents to found this great country. And of course, the Declaration of Independence was the first of those documents, the other one being the Constitution, and then of course also behind that the Bill of Rights. So tonight I want to talk about the Declaration of Independence, a document that says so much in so few words. However, before we do that, yes, it is time for a very short, very quick weekly summary. My commentary, or weekly commentary, like to call it, of the news. Not so long ago, we had that tragedy that occurred in Charleston, where 9 people were killed. After that happened, we had Sharpton, we had we had Hollywood, we had the president, all sorts of people standing up there. The president flew out and was present at one of the burials. Big fuss. Now, that was just a short while ago. This 4th of July holiday in Chicago, there were over 55 people shot. What did the lamestream media do about that? That's right, folks. Crickets. Worse than that, of those 55 people shot, 10 are dead. So that's more than were killed in Charleston. So where was Al Sharpton? Where was Jesse Jackson? Where was the Department of Justice? Where was King Barry? Where were all of them? Where was the lamestream media? They say that black lives matter, but when blacks kill blacks, do black lives still matter? We ask the question, and what answer do we get? That's right. We still get crickets. And why is that? Why the silence? Because no white people are involved. There's no racial aspect. No Confederate flag. No claims of racism. No police involved. No ability to claim brutality and to usurp the law, because that's really what we see the regressives doing time and time again. Not just in terms of things like wanting to get rid of the police. Let's look at what's going on in San Francisco, right? The sanctuary city, where another illegal alien, someone who has been deported 5 times, shot, just for the hell of it, shot an innocent young woman. Anything going to happen about it? No. Hopefully, the GOP candidates are going to stand up and say something about it. But I'm not sure whether they will. Will any of them have the cojones to do it? Well, except one of them, of course, Trump. And Trump had already predicted this, and it happened. And it's sad to be that he's able to say, "I told you so," but he did tell us so. And then everybody was, "Oh, but you can't say that." Why not? It's the truth. And that truth was proven this weekend in San Francisco. And there are other sanctuary cities all around the nation. Something has to be done about that, because basically they are ignoring the rule of law. Now, also very recently, we had the rule of law being reinforced by the Supreme Court and saying whatever is in the federal law applies across all the states. Why isn't that so in this case for immigration law? Why isn't that so for the Second Amendment? Well, yeah, because they're regressives and they only care about the laws that fit their narrative. Anyway, folks, I'm going to move on, and we're going to get to tonight's main topic. And tonight's main topic are my thoughts about the Declaration of Independence. Why is the Declaration of Independence important? It's not part of our Constitution, but it does speak volumes to the way people were thinking at that time. And, if you like, those thoughts led to what eventually became our Constitution. I'm going to weave some of my own ideas around some ideas that I also got from a writer called Randy Barrett. And he's bringing out a book called Our Republican Constitution, Securing the Sovereignty of the People. It's not available yet. You can pre-order it to Amazon. And he talks about the history about drafting the Declaration of Independence. And he has taken information from yet another author, Pauline Maier, a book called American Scripture, Making the Declaration of Independence. I have to say that I am trying to get hold of some of these books because as someone who wants to study the Constitution and the Founding Fathers and that time, I think these are going to be very good books. But anyway, let's get back to the topic. So everyone in America, pretty much all Americans have heard of the Declaration of Independence. When I say Americans, I mean legal immigrants, Americans, American citizens. But most of them haven't read all of it. And a year ago, I read parts of it as well. And I focused last time on the usurpations part of it. That's where they list everything that King George and the British Parliament were doing that they felt was negative. This time I'm going to focus a little bit more on the preamble, the introduction to the document, because it talks a lot about the natural rights that they felt were important in that time and really helped lead to the American Revolution. And it sort of, as I said before, it gives you a good idea of what they were thinking about and their kind of frame of mind that led to the Constitution about 10 years later, after the Declaration of Independence and after the War of Independence. And I want to think a little bit about the natural rights that they describe and how they're reconciled with the idea of the consent of the governed, because that's a very loaded term there, but one that many people know. So let's go back a little bit in history. The Continental Congress was meeting in Philadelphia, and by June they decided that yes, they had to they were agreed that they had to declare independence from Great Britain. Before that time there'd been a lot of discussion and a lot of people who felt that that was taking it too far, but and remember, the Continental Congress in 1776 was actually the second one, because at the first one they just basically sent a letter to the King and to Parliament and said, we don't think we're being treated right, please change that. Nothing happened. So the Second Continental Congress, there was a lot of discussion. Should we or should we not declare independence from Great Britain? But by the middle of June, they had decided that yes, everybody had come round to the way of thinking that this had to happen. And so they appointed a committee that was going to take a motion that had been put by Richard Henry Lee and basically frame that into a declaration that they could publish and basically say, King George, up yours. The motion that Henry Lee had put in front of the Congress was that these united colonies are, and of right ought to be, free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved. So this is what the Congress had agreed, if you like, had voted on, and this was kind of the fuel or the lighter that set the fuel on fire. John Hancock, of course, who we know one of the signers of the Declaration, and the one that had his huge hand, described it later as providing the ground and foundation of a future government. And that's why I think this document's quite important, because it shows you what they were thinking at the time. Now, the committee that got together to actually craft the document consisted of 5 people. Obviously, one of them was Benjamin Franklin, who was really very well known as an erudite person, but also Roger Sherman of Connecticut, New York's Robert Livingston, John Adams from Massachusetts, a champion of independence, and then a rather quiet 33-year-old Virginian called Thomas Jefferson. After meeting a few times to decide on the outline of the Declaration, the committee decided to assign Jefferson to write the first draft. Now, Jefferson didn't have a lot of time, and the Continental Congress was actually running the war that was actually going on at that time. And there were all sorts of committees running this, that, and the other, and Jefferson was involved heavily with a lot of them. So he didn't have a lot of time. So this committee was appointed on June 11th, and on June 17th, Jefferson submitted 2 reports to Congress on the Canadian campaign. And they were both in Jefferson's own hands. So he was pretty busy. So with everything going on, he didn't have 3 weeks to write it. Remember, 4th of July? He only had a few days. And after the break, we're going to talk what happened in those few days. So folks, stick with me. We're going to go for a quick break, and I will be back after these messages.
You can lose 10, 20, 30 pounds or more with Maximum Slim's first ever rapid weight loss guarantee. Today, you get Maximum Slim, an advanced fat and carb blocker, absolutely risk-free. The all-natural ingredients in Maximum Slim are a powerful weight loss combination. The Maximum Slim formula turns your body into a fat-burning furnace that supercharges your weight loss. Advanced fat and carb blocker stops the breakdown of sugar so your body doesn't store it as fat. Today, you'll get both of these products absolutely risk-free with no obligation. Only pay shipping. There are no expensive meal plans or exhausting DVDs. Just take Maximum Slim twice a day. It's fast, simple, and now it's guaranteed. Look, you can start losing weight today or not. Go back to your high school days and wear your favorite jeans again. Guaranteed. Call now and get both weight loss formulas free. Call 800-451-0228. 800-451-0228. That's 800-451-0228.
Doc, you gotta give it to me straight.
All right.
'Cause I'm dying here. I mean, take a look at this letter from the IRS.
Oh, my.
This is killing me, Doc. I tell you, it's killing me.
Cheer up, my friend.
Huh?
The tax doctor is here. My diagnosis tells me that you're going to be just fine.
Really?
The tax doctor will not rest until we find you the best possible tax settlement.
Really, Doc?
Guaranteed.
If the IRS claims you owe them $10,000 or more in business or personal back taxes, call a tax doctor right now. We could save you up to 75% if you qualify. Guaranteed or you pay nothing. Call right now for free details.
800-917-8546. 800-917-8546. 800-917-8546. That's 800-917-8546.
This is Patrick Come Lately Talk Radio, coming to you live via the internet, via rebroadcast on WRSDB, the Red State Talk Radio Network, or from the recordings at archives.patrickcomelately.us. And here we are. This is Stephen, your Patrick Come Lately. We're talking about the Declaration of Independence, that document that was published on July 4th. The day that on the other side of the Atlantic we call Good Riddance Day. No, just kidding, folks. The other side of the Atlantic, they don't even know anything about July 4th. But anyway, let's continue. We were talking about Jefferson having a very short space of time to write this initial draft of the Declaration of Independence. He didn't have the full 3 weeks because he was doing so many other things. So really, he just had 2-3 days to do it in. Needing to work that fast, obviously, Jefferson was going to borrow. Now, in those days, borrowing text from other authors was actually not seen as a negative thing. Today, we scream plagiarism and stolen and whatever, but in those days it was actually in some ways it was an achievement, described as, to use the words of the time, in the creative adoption of pre-existing models to different circumstances, and the highest praise of all went to imitations whose excellence exceeded that of the examples that inspired them. So in those days it was quite normal to take take texts from other sources and use them. So Jefferson had two important sources from which he could borrow the text. One of them was a draft preamble for the Virginia Constitution that also contained a list of grievances against the British Crown. And as I said, last year I handled that and saw how many were very similar to things that are being imposed upon us by King Barry. And so that did end up, obviously, in the Declaration. The second was a draft, a preliminary version of the Virginia Declaration of Rights that had been drafted by George Mason in Williamsburg, Virginia, when they were having the Virginia Convention before the Continental Congress. Mason's draft for the Virginia Declaration of Rights proved very useful in composing the famous preamble, and that's because its first two articles presented two fundamental ideas that ended up in our Declaration of Independence, and actually in our Constitution as well. The first idea was that first come rights and then comes government. And I think that's a very important one. When we think about it, the regressives sort of say, first comes government and government gives you rights. No. Our original founding fathers said that their idea was that first come the rights. The rights are given to you by the Creator and government follows. Now, Mason expressed it slightly differently, and Thomas Jefferson was going to take that and wordsmith it, but he said that all men are born equally free and independent and have certain inherent natural rights, of which they cannot by any compact deprive or divest their posterity, among which are the enjoyment of life, liberty, with the means of acquiring and possessing property, and pursuing and obtaining happiness and safety. Now, I think you recognize a lot of words that ended up in the Declaration of Independence. But a couple of key things there. So not only do all persons have certain natural rights, and I'll come back to what those rights are, but those rights cannot be taken away by any compact. And in actual fact, Mason's words were actually variations of them were incorporated into several state constitutions, as well as being modified and put into by Jefferson into the Declaration. Article 2 of Mason's draft also identified the persons who comprise a government as the servants of the sovereign people rather than their master. Now remember, at that time, one of the things that was going on was that people felt that they were being leaned upon by the British Crown, and they wanted a government that they could tell what to do. Mason expressed it this way, that all power is vested in and consequently derived from the people, that magistrates are their trustees and servants, and at all times amenable to them. And so as trustees and servants, those people who were governing Virginia, this was Mason's intent, were to respect the inherent natural rights retained by the people. Jefferson managed to compress all of what Mason said down into that very famous part of the Declaration, 55 words. 55 words that say so much. I said that in the introduction, said that in the description of the show online at Spreaker. You know, so few words that say so much. And those words are, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that amongst these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Now I'm going to go into that in a bit more detail. John Adams wrote later that Jefferson only took a day or two to write the first draft, and then it was turned over to the committee for its feedback, and then they submitted it to the Congress. Although this draft itself was heavily edited and shortened by Congress, its preamble was left pretty much as Jefferson had written. And so I want to talk about, like I said, that preamble. As we discuss this, it's important to remember one very important thing. This document constituted high treason against the Crown. Every person who signed it, if the British had their way, would have been executed as traitors. Secondly, it was seen as a legal document by which the revolutionaries justified their actions and explained why they felt they were not really traitors. It was sort of an indictment, if you like, an indictment document of the Crown, British Crown, and Parliament, in the same way that criminals get indicted by grand juries and their crimes are documented. This is really what this document was supposed to be. However, with all the discussions that they'd had about whether they should or should not declare independence from the UK, remember, this is a revolution. This is something pretty heavy. It was obvious Congress felt that it wasn't enough that the officials of the government of England, or Parliament, or even the King himself had violated the rights of the people. They knew, the Founding Fathers knew, that no government is perfect. All governments violate rights. This they knew. So they decided they had to allege more than just violation of rights. They had to allege basically criminal conspiracy to violate their rights systematically. So that's why it has this long reference with a long train of abuses and usurpations. And as I said, handled that last year. Many of those complaints account for certain parts of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. So we'll come back to that. The Constitution, Bill of Rights gets its time round about the middle of September. Remember, September 17th is Constitution Day. So I will do similar thoughts on different parts of the Constitution and Bill of Rights in September. But anyway, let's go back to the preamble, because the preamble, in a way, in just 2-3 sentences, very much describes the way they felt about politics at that time, and basically what the new policy would be going forward. So let's go into the first sentence. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. So here's where they're saying, we're going to say why we want to indict the British Crown, why we want to indict Parliament, why we feel we have to do this. We're being forced to do this, and therefore we don't feel that we are traitors, because it's something that has been forced upon us. And this sentence doesn't get a lot of discussion, doesn't normally get a lot of publicity. A lot of people don't remember this one, but it is pretty important. But before we discuss it any further, it's time for the next commercial break. So hang on, folks. I will be right back after this interlude.
Patriot come lately. British by birth. American by choice. Just like the Founding Fathers. The voice of the conservative resistance.
Every day, millions of Americans grow more concerned about the future of our great nation. The truth is, over the last century, a small but powerful collectivist movement known as progressivism has debased our politics, our culture, and our currency. We're just a small step from falling into 1,000 years of darkness, as Ronald Reagan warned. Friend, this is Pat Boone with an important free offer on a hot new book called The Great Withdrawal by Craig Smith and Lowell Ponte. This new book explains how we, the people, can end this fatal detour into big government and get back on the path of faith and freedom charted by our founders. Call now for a free copy of the hot new book called The Great Withdrawal.
Call now for your free copy. 800-978-3901. 800-978-3901. 800-978-3901. That's 800-978-3901.
Owe $10,000 or more to the IRS that you can't pay? Call now for immediate help. At the Tax Relief Line, we help people just like you. If you take on the IRS alone, you could be facing levies, liens, even wage garnishments, personal or business tax issues. If you owe $10,000 or more to the IRS, call now and see if you can pay less. They can freeze your bank accounts, even garnish your wages. Call the Tax Relief Line now for immediate help. Our expert team of tax professionals will negotiate your tax problem and deal with the IRS for you. If the IRS is threatening you with levies, wage garnishments, or seizing your assets, call now and see if you can pay the IRS less.
888-789-5043. 888-789-5043. 888-789-5043. 888-789-5043.
This is Patriot Come Lately Talk Radio, keeping the spirit of America alive, a proud member of the Red State Talk Radio Network. And thanks for sticking with me through that break. We're already halfway through the show, folks. Time flies when you're having fun. So, I was talking about that first sentence of the Declaration of Independence. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands that have connected them with another. Now, yes, a lot of the time this sentence gets forgotten, but there are some very key aspects of it that you can extract from there. And again, that Jefferson was able to, in just a very few words, put some very key things. First of all, it asserts that Americans as a whole, as one group, rather than as members of their respective colonies, it didn't say that the colonies needed to dissolve the political bands. It said one people. So they, even in this Declaration of Independence, Jefferson was giving this idea of being one distinct people. Of course, now we have the regressives trying to subdivide us and race and gender and this and that and the other. Founding Fathers saw as one people. But this one people is not a collective entity. We're not all the same, but it's an aggregate of particular individuals. So we are a group of different individuals, because later on, Jefferson uses the word they, right? to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. They. It doesn't say that this one people, should declare the causes. No, it says that they as people. And for them, saying that dissolving the political bands, right, that would basically translated into terms that regressives might understand, that revokes the social compact that had existed between the colonists and the rest of the people of the British Commonwealth, and it reinstates the state of nature, because Jefferson says, to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them. So again, going back to this idea that the laws of nature supersede any government, anything else above, there is nothing else above that. The laws of nature and nature's God, and this also answers some of the questions that the regressives always say about our founding fathers not being as God-fearing, not being as religious, and that talking about the separation of church and state, and yet here you see that they bring it into the whole discussion. Now, but where did those laws of nature come from? Well, there were lots of discussion, and we've got my good friend John Hancock has written about how certain things going on in the UK basically came to be the foundation of these sort of things. But I think also at that time there was a lot of discussion before the Declaration of Independence was created and then signed. And it's very telling that there was a sermon delivered by a Reverend Goodrich in Durham, Connecticut, on the eve of the Philadelphia Constitutional Convention. So it was common practice at that time for ministers to be invited to give an election sermon before newly elected government officials. So now we have some officials who've been elected to represent Connecticut and go down to Philadelphia. And they had this church service, and there was a special sermon to encourage them to govern according to God's ways. And in his sermon, Goodrich explained that the principles of society are the laws which Almighty God has established in the moral world and made necessary to be observed by mankind in order to promote their true happiness in their transactions and intercourse. Now, those are very interesting words, I think, because they're, in some ways, the Reverend Goodrich doesn't say that you have to follow his way of religion, whichever church he represented, just that you need to have a moral approach, right? Established in the moral world and made necessary to be observed by mankind, laws which Almighty God had established. So you see there, this is also part of what they were, this mindset of the Founding Fathers, that religion was an important part of their life, but they didn't want to force any one particular religion on people. But that's very different to what we hear today, because what we hear today is that religion needs to be excluded from government. And that's not at all what was part of that. What they wanted here was to allow everybody to worship in the way that they wanted, but that did not mean that religion was shut out from government. Goodrich further observed that these laws may be considered as principles in respect of their fixedness and operation. By knowing them, we discover the rules of conduct which direct mankind to the highest perfection and supreme happiness of their nature. These rules of conduct are as fixed and unchangeable as the laws which operate in the natural law. In other words, he's basically saying laws of physics and these laws that apply, these moral laws, are pretty much the same thing. Human art, in order to produce certain effects, must conform to the principles and laws which the Almighty Creator has established in the natural world. So these are things which they say are obvious. These are things which God has set up for us. And he gives some examples, because he says natural laws govern every human endeavor, not just politics. So they guide us in everything we do. And he gave some examples. The farmer who neglects the cultivation of his field and the proper time of sowing may not expect a harvest. The engineer who would assist mankind in raising weights and overcoming obstacles depends on certain rules, right? Scientific rules, derived from the knowledge of mechanical principles applied to the construction of machines in order to give the most useful effect to the smallest force. And every builder should well understand the best position of firmness and strength when he is about to erect an edifice. So you've got to follow these physical laws, and as much as there are physical laws, there are also these moral laws which were obvious to the founding fathers. To ignore these principles is nothing short of denying reality. He says, like jumping off a roof, imagining that one can fly. No more can mankind be conducted to happiness, or civil societies united and enjoy peace and prosperity without observing the moral principles and connections which the Almighty Creator has established for the government of the moral world. Yes, very powerful words there. Now, and what I would say to the atheists, what I would say to the people who say there is no God and there is no place for religion in government, I would say by doing that you are shutting out this morality. There's nothing wrong with recognizing the morality, and in fact nothing wrong. It is absolutely necessary in order to have, as the Reverend said, to enjoy peace and prosperity. And we see all sorts of examples of that now as we become more and more immoral, how things are getting worse and worse. People have no morality, and it's just making things so bad. So that was one part. Now, of course, the next sentence is probably the most famous one in the Declaration. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that amongst these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This is probably a line that many people, it's the only one they know. Now, the original draft actually said inalienable rights. Any difference between inalienable, unalienable? Probably a little bit, but it's obvious, whichever one you use, what they meant. They meant that these are rights that you cannot give up even if you want to, and even if you consent to do so. They're not like other rights that you could agree to transfer or to waive. So why were they claiming that these were inalienable? The founders wanted to counter England's claim that by accepting the colonial governance that they had, the colonists had waived or alienated their rights. And the colonists wanted to say, no, we have not done that because we cannot do that. And that goes back to what George Mason said as well about the compact, right, and not being able to make a compact that would take these rights away from you. The Founding Fathers claimed that because these rights were inalienable, you always retain the ability to take back any right that has been given up. Now, this is, I think, one of the important ones, because we're taught a lot of the time, if you give up your rights, you have lost them forever. The framers are saying, no, actually, you have not. Because you can't lose them. And so but this is the good news, you can fight to get them back. And that's definitely something we have to do, because we have a lot of rights that we've lost. But according to what the founders were thinking, we can get them back. So, anyway, before we go further on this, let's take another break, and I will be back.
If you're diabetic, this message could change your life. Is your blood sugar out of control even when you do all the right stuff? Are you afraid of diabetic blindness and the risk of amputation, as well as all those other side effects? Well, you should be. Is there anything that could help manage your blood sugar? Nobetes is a natural supplement that may quickly and dramatically lower your blood sugar.
My name is Bob Corder. I've been using Nobetes for about 3.5 to 4 months now. And in the first 3 months, I've actually lowered my blood sugars from 500s down to 139, and then it dropped to 88 to 93.
My name is Kirsten. I'm a type 1 diabetic, and while taking Nobetes, my blood sugar levels dropped from 295 to 115 in just 1 day.
The FDA hasn't evaluated these statements, and Nobetes isn't intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. But for many, it's helped drop their blood sugar. So if you've been evaluated with high blood sugar, don't delay. Evaluate Nobetes now. Call 800-424-3790 and get 2 bottles free. Just cover shipping and handling. Call 800-424-3790. That's 800-424-3790.
The offer of a franchise can only be made through delivery of a franchise disclosure document. Imagine yourself being a leader in America's fastest growing demographic category. More than 10,000 people a day turn 65, and a large percentage are going to need a helping hand at home or in choosing the right assisted living community. Always Best Care is looking for people who've excelled at everything they've done, but they're seeking a new challenge. Always Best Care is one of the fastest growing companies in this explosive field. We're looking for 25 new franchisees to keep our booming business growing. We'll back you up with the strongest award-winning marketing program in the industry, and we'll provide the special training and support that's fueled our growth to prepare you for this great opportunity. All that's missing is you. Call Always Best Care toll-free at 1-800-643-7508. That's 1-800-643-7508. For Always Best Care, 1-800-643-7508. Call today.
This is Patrick Come Lately Talk Radio, coming to you live via the internet, via rebroadcast on WRSDB, the Red State Talk Radio Network, or from the recordings at archives.patrickcomelately.us. And we're into the last section of the show, talking about the Declaration of Independence. So, talking about the most famous line of the Declaration, and of course it ends with that these inalienable or unalienable rights, that amongst these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And we know about the discussions around that. Of course, the standard trilogy in those times was life, liberty, and property. And if you look at the Declaration and Resolves of the First Continental Congress, Congress had asserted that the inhabitants of the English colonies in North America, by the immutable laws of nature, the principles of the English Constitution, and the several charters or compacts, have the following rights: that they are entitled to life, liberty, and property, and that they have never ceded to any foreign power whatever a right to dispose of either without their consent. Or as John Locke, who was the influential British political theorist, he had written, "No one ought to harm another in his life, health, liberty, or possessions." So, of course, this formulation had some issues because, and especially when George Mason was formulating it for the Virginia Declaration of Rights, not the one that was finally approved by the Virginia Convention, but he'd used that one of property and happiness. The Virginia Convention balked at the specific wording on the ground that it was not compatible with the slaveholding society. Exactly. So property, they felt that this was not right. They changed some of the other words and made some things. So we see, but George Mason's original draft was a lot more radical. Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, Vermont adopted a lot of the original references to born equally free, to natural rights, and that language was actually used by the Massachusetts Supreme Court to invalidate slavery in that state because it was part of their constitution. So even though it was kind of muted a little bit in the overall Declaration of Independence, it was muted a lot in the Virginia Declaration of Rights, it was still in there. Let's see. Well, we've got a little bit of time. I want to handle some other key things. That to secure the document goes on that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. So that goes back to what I said earlier on. The founders had this very strong idea of first come the rights and then comes government. So in order to secure these rights, make these rights available to everyone, men institute governments. If all men were angels, we wouldn't need governments, but we need governments to kind of protect these rights for us. Deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Now, I've handled that sentence in two parts, and so did the author of the book. Depending on which side of the aisle you are, I think pretty much, you tend to focus more on one half or the other, because the other half says, hey, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. In other words, and this is used kind of to say, well, we're a democracy and therefore the government gets powers from the government. But that part of the sentence, if you look at it, is actually still saying deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That doesn't actually give the power of the majority to the people in power. It means that the people who are being governed need to tell the people in power what they want, and that is the essence of a republican government. So, folks, as we can see, today there's a lot of focus on that second half because it kind of gives power to the government. But actually, if you read it in conjunction with the first half, it doesn't do that at all. And it's right. So it stipulates that those who govern the people are supposed to secure their pre-existing rights and not impose the will of majority of the people on the minority. Okay, folks, we are coming to the end of the show, I'm afraid. It's been a very special one, but it is obviously a special time of year. Hope that this has given you some ideas to take forward. For me, the biggest message is, you know what, folks, things can get better if we really want it to. Folks, time to go. TTFN, please join me next week, and remember, share this with your friends. Thanks a lot, folks. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to the show. I hope that you enjoyed tonight's topics. Whether you listened live, to a recording, or to a rebroadcast, I appreciate the time you share with me. We need to spread the message of liberty far and wide, so please tell your friends and family about the show. Thank you for helping to keep the beacon of hope burning. This is Stefan, your Patriot Come Lately, signing off. God bless America, and remember, L3, long live liberty.